Text cam AT251 in the morning. My granda's name on the screen. 3 words. Grandpa, help him. I was on my feet before I finish reading it. I was on my feet before I finish reading it. I've been a family Kurt his mediator for 20 white years. Been for the cipher that 4 years as a paralegal in Charleston, 2 more as a casa worker for since on shield service in Greenfield before I decan afford. Mater board for. I did the paperwork mater fan people to court. Mater than people to court. It didn't and went back to 4 score. I retired Giffordant and went back to fork. It just sits kuyater. But when something pulls it back up, it comes fast. My name is Thastum Osgood, and what I'm about to tell you started with 3 words on a foreign screen at 5 minutes to 3 in the morning. I called it her back immediately. It rang 4 time, screen at 3 in the morning. 10. Grandpa. Her voice was more, not whispering exactly. The kind of loo that means exactly. The kind of loo that means someone is in the building. I'm here. Tell me where you are. I'm at home. But he left and it hind no we arb. I'm at home. But he left ageds left and it no we are welse. I think some wrong with my wrist. 1 question. Shin you get to the door? Yes. You unlock it in dorm. And don't move. I'm leaving now. I was dressed in 6 minutes. Out the door by 2:58. My granddaughter is 17. SAG's the kind of kid WHO finishes her home eatoberg before she's hesk. Remembers her coffee. Order. Wait UHE sends birthday day texts at midnight so they're their first one you see. So pissed apart that night so they're their first one you see. She got into the pre-med track at her high school last spring. SHE told me on the phone, and her voice sounded like something she'd been waiting to say for on a long time. She has been living with her mother and her mother and her mother and her mother's husband for 2 years now. His name is Scott Prosteed. He sells commercial or real estate in Columbia, and he drives a troughs that costs more than most people's first homes. I met him at a family dinner about 3 months after my daughter started seeing him. That was October of the year started seeing him. That was October of the year before last. He arrived with a bottle of wine that he made sure everyone nodded. Within the first 20 minutes, he had work in 21st, had work in his salary range, his square footage, and a comment amount about how Isabella was lucky to have a marijuana model around the house now. My daughter Talar is 40W. She lost Isabel's father to a heart attack when Isabel was 9. 2 swears after where hard, ardent ways she did let slep people see. When she met Scott, she pulled her tick forensly heen. When she met Scott, she pulled her diff, orientically wong about him. I notic that too bold, about him, accord about him. The first intry I wrote in my notes was dated 14 months ago, November 3rd. Isabel came to Sunday dinner and barely spoke. Few Mel Claire asked her cement at the table. A simple thing. What class in Schwan? What classes she was enjoying in Isabel and Sabel tram tats before she Hansper. Just half a she contend. The kind of check that happens when someone has learned that the Terran's words can be corrected. Front on mode of other people. Entry. Tuesdeckan Brule. Isabel's Christmas break had historically mananta weeka pantamorith. Every year since she was spellum. Clark called to Stev, they were called to Stow, they were calling to say they were calling Hud instead. Scott had rented of lace. Entry. 9 was February. Isabel's text to me changed, not the content so much. Cedarin, mein Bass, say Hend, more of a talper, ben more of a talker, tan a texter. But the timing. Retzes that used to coming within Baxter, but the retimings that used to come within the heart started taking a day. Then, 2. Then some Tims not all. I noted the pattern without interpreting. I've done this work long enough to know that interpretation too early is how you miss what's actually happening. In March, I did something I didn't to tell anyone about. I introduced myself as Isabel's grandfather and told her I had noticed some changes in Isabel's behaviors. Behorn wanted to know if and wanted to know if thing had been fanfully good at school. She was coachy as at first, which I should first wish I respected. She Sebel's grages wered zealot. 10 she paused and said she used it to stop by my office just to talk. She hasn't done that since fall. I thanked her. I gave her my card. I called her if anything canned. I wanted to know if anything shanked. I wanted to know. In April, I gave Isabella Sadval's zinged, shanked turned. I wanted to know. In April, I gave Isabella Sadval. I left it in a mall zippet pocket inside. The jack and hair for foreign her birthday. A gift to a gift with ein, a gift, you can say. Wit hedden on the onside of coquet, in my handworting, of the pocket in my handwortin, a mumbrin, my number, and Byron, and Byron, and Barbrind, and Barvin, unlined, only you know this es. Use it poignant. She folded the jacket over her arm and hugged me and said, "Thank you, Grandpa, the way she always has." But later I saw her take the jacket inside vate futterity from her other saw to rubber thens. Not with the pliles she handed Scott Cack. Isabel showed up at my house on a Saturday afternoon. You intend. She said she'd been out run 10 inruns and wanted to say hello. It was 9 netterins and to say hello. It was 9 netter went to graze. She was in a light cardigan over her shirt. When Sir reached up to get a glass from my cabinet, the sleeve pheasisimilis, and I saw Burma losing all along her upper caver arm. Parallel, not the kind that comes from walking into a door frame. She said she'd bump it into a frame walking into a door frame. She said she'd bump it into a theater moving boxes. SHE game the name of the store and the specific AS. 8 had the story ready before I ask. I got her some water. W sat on the porch and talked it about her summer. Redding sat on this porch and talked it about her summer reading. I didn't push. I gid fush the name let her see what I seen. And after she drove away in the little polhad that had been her father's, I opened with my fond to Wan, Julie 19, Isabel, Unanonces, bruising a pure leaf tarm, paraleaf porn ecum, not carn led turnton, not consent with it, brooded, cause, longfrode, not calm the turn, not consensant, with reported commetangen, unproned, watching, that was entry 20W. I kept toying. By the time I pull it into Clanes, I peel it into Clarion Scotters and Scott's Deriviboe at 3:40 hund, 14 in the morning. I had 37 entries. A late months of dates and datia. Head delve, peelins ven finuds. And careful longer wage that savin with port of it eatin what I felt about it. I felt penty w in what I felt about eating, what I felt about bidding, what I felt about. I wrote what I saw. The front door was unlocked. Isabel was sitting at the bottom of the stairs with a dishto waprita propta around her left waft whist and her cantias pulled up to her set. She looked up when I came in, and the sound she made was not a word. It was the sound of something that had been held for a very long time, finally letting go. I sat down on the step by her, so she was looking down at me, not up. Eye level matters when someone has spent time feeling sound feeling summony. Nobody can serve those that door without going troth me first. She noted on see. Her hay once were drees. Hay had moved past square dree. She had moved past crying. That told me something's of fine about how long this had actually been going on. I asked her to shirry me the whiskin ain't going on. I asked her tell me what happened. I listened the way I tagas had myself to listen over 20 years, completely, with steering over 20, with 8 years, completely, without steering my face through the work of raking so, cakin so ked what she roboted ten, so ked in my cadded, what steered botch of rakin, she had been on her fern, texting a friend about a homeward work question. Scott had told her French and she'll repan. Scott had told her phones it's the table were disrespectful. She'd sawed she had see almost done. He'd dockened the phone out of her hand. When she reached fed for a Sackler was in the kitchen when it happened. Did your mother see it? Isabel looked at the dish foul. Isabel stroked at the dish towel. She see Cam on right after. What did she say? Say told me I shouldn't have. Told me I shouldn't have provoked him. I held that for cum. I held that had for wait. Yim. Not now. Latter. I asked her about other time. Not now. Latter. I asked her about other time. I asked her specifically and without judgment in my voice. I needed dates if she had them. I needed to know if there were other incidents was Mark. I needed to know per marks. I needed to know force and if Hamer and he know if one in school had nodded and not a thing bezited anything bezidence. When, see, finished, I said, you did exactly the right thing Tonnet. Sending that text, unlocking the door, sending free. The look that asks, is this awkwardly going to be okay, or are you just saying that? What happens now? Happens now, she asked. Now what happens? Now some calls. And while I do, no one touches you. That's not a wish, and while I do, no one touches you. That's not a wish. That's not a fact. She looked down at her wrist. Is mom going to be mad? I held that question the way you hold something fragile, because the fact that she was asking about her mother's, instead of her own state of her melancholy, instead of her behas, told me everything I needed to know about how long this deed told me everything I need to know. About long this deed of hen. ILL talk to her. That's not your job tonight. Tonight your only job is to let people help you. Can you do that? Yes, she said. No hesitation. I petted my hand over hers away from the onrude words, away from the honrudo wished will. Then I stepped in bed, then out went to work. The first call was to Columbia emergency. Then I stepped outside and went to work. Isabel need the wrist evaluated. I kept it factual, 17-year-old, possible fracture, mechanism was for twird twisting in your relief prox in your wrist singing, in your approximate list. 2M was foreign twisting, injury approximately 2 hours old. The dispatcher asked if she weren't afforded. I said it calling be, because the way you say things on dust as cowls affects how the information is received ben do comment. The second call was to Ruth Hadley. Ruth was my call was to Ruth Hadley. Ruth was my colleague Fadley. SHE is 61 years old. She does not sleep one in, and she answered on the second door. Ruth, I need an emergency protective order for my granddaughter. Physical injury by a stepfather, deoxyamended pattern going back a4. Wait months, medical evaluation pending as of right now. 3 Coons. A guess. I gave it to her. Send, May, everything you have before Sykes. I have 37 entries on my phone, unphoned, and a prepaid device she's been using that he doesn't that. Now exists. A pause. Maurix. Thomas. How long have you been building this? Eid Hamas. Another pause. Another pause. Send I'd all. The third call was to my son-in-law's brother, whose number I had from a family of them previous and the previous. Not to warn him, to put something on record that someone out record that someone outside this house be notified. So madam's documentation is about what you say. So madam's it's about what you can prove you said and when. He didn't Sarah. I left a message. Clear. Date and time stated at the start. I went back inside. It's the start. SHE looked like a woman walkers and send the argument and had spent their robins have Wayne Kunchwich, way to vows Beckason's which, dadded, she'd say, where, war taking Isabel to the ear, we taking Isabel to the ear. I say did. Where's need to come in Isabel to the ear? Heimer, assated. SC tot, dotine, Silaire. I said her name in the same tone I used with her when she was 8 and trying to talk around some same thing she already sing to Falker Pound, some thing she already knew was true. I am not as king. I am telling you, what true the hospital, you can come with you is true. Bew she is going. Something moved across her face. She looked at Isabel sitting on the stairs. Then she hammer kant, then she hammer cough, then she sighed. Age of the patient. I did not autorialize. In tok nurses respond betoint during fornian to emotion. That is something 28 years teaches you. They took Isabel back with a met when 12 minutes. Clear, and I sat Abel back with him 12 minutes. Clear, and I sat in the waiting row. I didn't push her. I've cause from enough people in rooms like that to know mount whence like that's night, through no processing, and when it's a broadcasting, and when it's evadance. This was both. How long has this been happening? I said. It's not like that regularly. Slave. Happen. It's been under a lot of thirst that's work, and I'm not asking about his proust. I'm asking about your daughter's wrist. She pressed her helfer lips together and looked at the flow. When she fondly spoke and looked at the floor. When she fondly spoke, her voice was very small. And I munt eat, not as absolution, as fact. There is a difference between what occurrence between house and what their how those and what they all owe themselves to now. I bows of is a vez to now. I vasset in citians could have been in many ancient room swim wars for most of my working life. I wasn't going to pretend it was simple now. The Irfinchinge could have intended. Mallory Voss. C cam to find me in the waiting or rather than sending a known thing. A nurse, which told me she had some things she wanted to say directly. She in Rodist have directly. She in Rodocurds hepself and asked if I was a Zelva. My attorney is fulling for an emergency. Particict of are the patient's behalf as of this morning. Dar, Voss looked at me for one beat. The look of someone were one beat. The look of someone where Burkov's information they were not expecting and is recalibrating. On. Osgood. Sheethov, the fracturing. On. Distal radius, lefty wrist. The mechanism is consistent with 4K rotational steeros, sheephouse. Isos. I also sent the imaging to oro tent rating radiologist for a case, for also mechanism radius for a Kalbrand radiologist for a case. For Tavert and Vecker, first and fifth metacarcobs. Probably for Tavos. I too was Zemmer turned. A stud, very still. A fracture that healed without treatment. Isabel had managaded a howlin. The pain. The haining. The curietition not to till him. Not till anyone. He had been protesting even then. I put that away. Not now. Later. Document everything. I saving tum. Everything. I said. Exact language on the mint everything. I say to Purrit. Econquage on the mechanism. Both injuries. I need it complich. Unprothinch. Both. I'm morse of reg. Do it now. She held my ease for a moment. Does she have someone? She has me. I send. I said me. I said. She nodded on Steve and walked back toward the Clairol. I found Clairol a ride, found Clairol, Aria. I found Claire on the Clairol arene room. I sat down and I told her about both Weeding Rune. I sat down and I told her about both on Yuri. New one and the eld one. The never received treatment. I might at her face while I told her. There is a specific look that crosses a prosin, look that crossin's face when they are der scene spenders their Edinburgh the might. As she covered her mouth with both hands and didn't speak for a long time. When she'd said, she sat it, she'd never bite, buried about them pre about the first one. I know. I said. I've reviewed your notes, she said. Thomas, entry Forden. Deckenfuhr. The Christmas break cancellation. Uway. Wrote possible contrail bayan. Uway. Possible contrail bayer. Not confarmed. That cuilisier, you'd. A judgin rids that as honest documentation, not advocacy. That's why you wrote it that way. Combine it with the medical report and the does feeling. and you have a substantialing, and you have a substantial BSc, and you have the potational BS accordance. I can have the potational in front of dig Carol Weston's clear. AG handles emergency, family matters, and sees Dorthuff. How long? She'll review it personally. If everything is in order, thing is in order. If everything is in order, Thomas, from what you sent me, it is in order. IDX beat, a ruling by 9, why 9 or 10. I looked at that back for Zoom. I looked in accordant. I went back to Isabel's room. She was sitting up against the race that, once this foft cast on her left cars on her left wust, and a blanket plate, prolded around her shooters that inures that of Vetty, hod left folded at the fed of the end of the bed. She looked up when a blain. I've been working. On what? I sat down in the chair beside her. I told her that my attorney filling for an foreign emergency protective order this morning. That a judge would review it and make a decisive order this morning. That a judge would review it and make a disposition. Tat I wasn't promising a specific outcome yet, because I don't deal in maybes, and what that means is I also don't make promises before they're facts. Because I want you to know this is moving, right now, while Dway, sitting here. She looked at the cast. What a mom. There are questions that contain and tine history inside them. That was one of the questions. Isabel was not a skank where her mother's question. Isabel was not a skank where her mother was. She was asking whether her mother was. She was asking whether mother her bows in her. Sheen is not going anywhere. Is she mod? She's not mod, I said. She's figuring some thins hounds. Doubts that's going to take her 7. That's going to take her a little time. But she's here. Isabel not slowsy. Then she serble dunkak her a long time but she cown. But she's here. Isabel nodded slowly. Then she said, Grandpa, how long have you cown? I started written down 8 months ago. She stared at me. You never said anything. Not yet. I said. I need to wild something that couldn't bat could. Pure G'd with. Feels can be dismissed. Dockn't be argued with. Feels can be dismissed. Document, it's harder to dismiss. She was cooed for a moment. Then, is that why you gave me the phone? In a peril, I said. He PR. Yes. She looked at her cast again. Then she looked back at me with a bat farn kazaminus. Then she looked back at me with a mean fresh. It first and I need zed. He'd have a name for a first. Then I recognized it. It was really that had been waiting so long. It had almost forgot it thoned. Okay, said. Then, after a moment, I'm hungry. Does this hospital have anything that doesn't taste like cardboard? SAT down on the other Stibble's beds. She'd say anything at first. She just put her hand very carefully next to Fee. I SAT on the other side of the room and let that happen without me in it. AT 7002, a DSS investigator arrived. Her name was Keisha Morrow. SHE was professional, unheard, and C had the specific quality of someone which who has SAT with enough people, enough to physic wit rooms to know how to be present with how to booms to know how to be present without aiding pressure. She hasted to speak with Isabel privately. I told her my authority had fulls for N peepo and asked if I could remain accessible just outside the room. She said that was standard. I stood outside their side. Door for all 39 miny company. Of that conversation, the door for all 39 minutes of that conversation. When she came out, she walked 2 steps toward me and spoke Hapel. Hair AC count is consistent and day filed. She describes a pattern beginning approximately teen mately pros. Months after the marriage. Escalating frequency. She identifies Ford incidents. She identifies Ford incidents that left visible marks and estimates their maybe edition. She is not ready to edition B piles and estimates their maybe edition SHE was self-correcting on specific dates, which is consistent with honest recollection. She paused. SHE also deskrudfekten signiven enfetial, sedanativas daxgrid, significant isolation over the pacen over the past year. Over the past year, of side contact, phone monitoring, family by its reduc, essayed her contact with you had been estively discouraged. I absorbed that without expression. I'm abitting by findings to DCC'd. Your documentation is going to matter a great deal in what comes next. I said. That's why I kept it. 884, Ruth called. I was in the corridor with a paper, Ruth called. I was in the corridor with a paperdor with a fomenting the fasan he's corrid court with fearently. Dejwiferently verently. I set down the cup. Emergency protosective ord. EF septive I'm mediate, Lee. Scot protut. For wided from all contact with the minor. Physical or electronic. He is rocker on checked. He is required to vacate the family residence with men to 24 hours or be kept removable by law enforcement. Within 24 hours or be kept removable by law enforcement. Salai return sal custody. You are granted concurrent, corrigid gorgianship authority, pretending a full hiddy pending, a full hivierans inform cares. Ruth. Don't think meet. That meet. The 45-day hearing is where this gets built out permanently. Today, the 40-day hearing is where this gets built out permanently. I tesn finish the work. It never does, I said. What do I do first? Tell your granddaughter, how your granddaughter, she said. Everything else can wait 10 minutes. I pulled the door open quietly. Isabel was awka, looking at the ceiling with the expression of someone with, had run out of thuns to think and was just waiting for the next thing to happen to them. She looked at me when I came in. I sessed on down. I told her in plain language because she had a year until Clane Blanewall. EFEFT there's morning. Scott was required to leave the house. She was not going back to that situation. She started Ming. Think calm. When did that happen? 8:44 this morning. I said Ford. Several things, in the order that feels arrive when you've been holding them at harm's length for a long time, and suddenly dunly don't have for have do any more. Her chin did the thing time have do any more. Her chin did the thing chins do. She take it agains. Okay. She tegged. I've been a walk, sing key yesterday, and this place last like antispelt. I look at a haftas a pent. I looked at her for a 4-8. The place near my house does biscuits and grapes and gravy, I said. And really kips, pent, 4. For the first time since Singby push a pet open that door 8-3. 4. For the first time since then, I do push it, not pourin', not pull it, not perform. The real kind, brief and completely her own. Before W.E. left I had one more conversation I need to have. I found Claire and then found Clear Bine. She was alone. She had been bare in the waiting room. She was alone. She had been crying and she was past it now. In the particular stillness of someone we has made a tition. There cannot walk ISAT across from her. Not beside her. I need her to see my face for this. I told her about the EPO. I told her about the 37 entries. I told her about the 37 countries. I told her about the healed fracture in Julie that Isabel had managed without ever saying a word. I told her what Kaisha Morrow had described about the isolation and the phone, monitoring and the visits excessively discouraged. I did not tell her what Isabel had described about specific incidents. That was Isabel had described about specific incidents. That was Isabel's ace count in Isabel's time. Clayisha, with wet looking away. When I finished she was quiet for a long moment. Then she said, I kept to telling myself it was if it wasn't as bad as it looked. There were many things I could have sewed. There were many things I could have said. I coast the one that was true and useful and did close any doors. Tat door is still open. She looked at her hands. Is she going to forgive me? I don't now, I said. Tat not now, I said. Tat's not a question I can answer. But I might said her part. But I might said her tak your hand and whore. But I skid her take your hand a whore ago. That was her choice. Hold on to that. The same number, it do it in Isabel's jacket pocket apparel. Ruth Hadley will be in two, Sid Hadley will be in two. Those two thens are not always the same, but that morning they felt close enough. Scott Perritwitz Heberward served with the EPO at 08 Ruthin. 23 bide morning by 2 offens pointed the rate for farm the Rick and Tuncons can scare shift Bose Perriman. He vacated the residence by 4 effort torn fence count sheriff. I now because I was their locksome hith. 11 days later, the DSSN's investigation concluded its inutile findings. Scott was charged with criminal domestic violence in the first degree and one lawful neglect of a clid. The prosecutor's office noted in their filing that the pattern of documented in the presence of a prior untreated fracture elevated the charge of mangers to curja. Ruth told me the documentation was described in the filing as unusually systematic for a non-professional would have siege. I've done this work for 20 years. The habit does not turn off. 3 months later, I am sitting at my kitchen table on a Wednesday morning writing this when I hear Isabel in the living room. A living tear. Isabel in the living room all uptuck at something on her laptop. Not the careful alluge. I notice it in entries 11 through 16. The one C use when said when Scott was in the room modulated what is watching itself. The other kind. The one that happens before the brain decededs, watching it. The one that happens before the brain bexedids, whether it's appropriate. SIXW weeks after the EPO, Isabel told me she had decided to provide of a victim Tim Statman for the sentencing hearing. She did not ask my ill pension first. She told me afterward over the W-kant. First hoard, over Tustiskits and Betchen first. She told me afterward over the W-kants and Greet Puriban before score. She said, I keep thinking if I don't set it in front of people, it's like it gets to keep it cool. And I don't want him to keep it cool. And I don't want him to keep it cool. I looked at her for a moment. I've say starn, she means it. Estals said I don't have to be there for the verdicts, for the verdict. Isabel said. Tat someone can call me. Tat's your choice to make, I said. Not mine. She talk about it. Not mine. She talk about it. I want to be there. Fan W. Bear. Scott was convicted on both counts 4 months after that morning in the year. He was sentenced teens to 30 tt's with 12 months. Attorney AGU'd it was a first offense. The judge note that a first prosecution is not the same as a first offense. I wrote in try first off. She told me about a biology paper she was writing and what she wanted to study in college one third child. And for to be good at beat at a bit at a briller school. I told her but I said a bit cold haft. We both keep good notes, I said. Claire is in therapy now. That was her choice, made without being asked. It's 3 months in seeing ones. And she is doing what therapy requires, which is showing up honest and she is doing what therapy requires, which is showing up honestly when would be easier not to. I am PR out of her for that in a way that is specific and cue it and doesn't need to be said out loud. There is one thing I want to say before I finish. I gave Isabel that is scond furzing. I gave Isabel that scond fern in Purel. I noted the breeze pattern the previous November. Tot as 5 months speed one when I sawing something I couldn't name yemp in name white and when I apted on its B5 kun 5 cutting her way out. As the reason that going forward, I am someone who hops one spep sooner tan is confetan is comfortable. That is the only honest use of a thing you can shindy. She texted me 3 words a text, had more words a 2 text. Everything that fanoed. The EPO, the charges, the verdict, the civerdict, Claire in therapy. Isabel writing about biology, and asking about medical school. All of it begins with that one fact. She believed had come. All of it begins with that one fact. She believed that I would come. If you are watching this and something in your gut has been coolitlik registering for weeks or math, or months, something about someone how someone ear family left that you haven't been peer. Been able to name wheat from things left that you haven't been to name wheat for third thing that conferia. To rust, what your years of living have a lari tagatuture to recognize, the people that was need you to act before the worst night, not after it. I can because I was ready. I have been asked since all of this came out, whether I am angry. People expect the answer to be yes. They want the story to end with rage, with a confrontation, with a man who finally snapped and made someone pay in a visible, satisfying way. That is not what happened. And I think the reason it is not what happened is the same reason any of this worked at all. Anger moves fast and lands wherever it lands. Documentation moves slow and lands exactly where you need it to. I learned that in 28 years of sitting in rooms where people were hurting each other and needed someone to help them stop. The ones who came in loud rarely left with what they needed. The ones who came in prepared almost always did. What I did for 8 months was not patience in the passive sense. It was not waiting and hoping and trusting that things would work out. It was work. It was the kind of work that nobody sees and nobody praises, because there is nothing dramatic about opening a notes app and writing a date and a detail and closing it again. But that work is what gave Isabel something that feelings alone never could have given her. A case, a record, a set of facts that existed independent of anyone's willingness to believe them. There is something I want to say about Isabel, because I think it is the part of this story that matters most and gets said the least. She was 17 years old and she managed a fractured hand for 4 to 6 months without telling a single person. She went to school. She kept her grades. She answered my texts in the careful, neutral way of someone composing messages that might be read by someone else first. She did all of that because she had calculated, correctly, that speaking too soon without the right support in place would make things worse, not better. That is not the behavior of someone who needed rescuing. That is the behavior of someone who needed backup. The difference matters. I did not swoop in and solve Isabel's problem. I arrived with the pieces that completed what she had already been quietly building on her own. The restraint, the endurance, the decision to hold on until she had a way out that would actually work. She put that phone number in the inside pocket of her jacket, not the outside one. She knew exactly what she was doing. What I carry from this is not triumph. It is a very specific regret about 5 months and what I choose to do with that regret. I saw something I could not yet name in November. I gave her the phone in April. Those months in between she handled alone. I cannot give them back. What I can do is make sure that going forward, I am someone who acts when the evidence is incomplete, rather than waiting until it is airtight. Because the people who needed me before the worst night, not on it. Ruth tells me she has been referencing this case in conversations with other attorneys, not to be dramatic about it, just to say, this is what it looks like when a family member documents instead of reacts. Claire's doing the work. Isabel is writing about biology and asking about medical school. Scott Pruitt received a sentence that named the pattern for what it was. None of that came from fury. All of it came from a notes app and a prepaid phone and a decision made 8 months before that text arrived to be ready. That is the whole of it.